guys and gals, and here from Drake Queen Gaming and something on Twitter, the Gaming Dragon. Today I'm coming back at you for Let's Play episode of Kingsguard, Koshiro's Path. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right back into it, shall we? Alarm chain, you were up, and let's go. Just having some delicious sake. The taste was much sweeter than you thought as well, and you found yourself craving some more. You're glad that Koshiro had poured you a tiny bit first. You might have downed the bottle otherwise. I take it you like it. Yeah, it's really strong, too. A few bottles of this might be capable of knocking me off my feet. You weren't allowed much to drink aboard the ship, but I think your body may be healed enough that you should be fine, so go ahead and enjoy yourself. If you do get too drunk, I can always carry you. As I said, it'll take a lot more than this to get me drunk. Why don't you try some yourself? That may not be such a good idea. Why? Are you a lightweight? You noticed him and Koshiro stared down. Last time your father gave me something to drink, Never mind, forget I said anything. You can't just start a story and end it like that. Come on, I'd expect me to sleep tonight when you need a tail on a cliffhanger. Alright, but you must keep this to yourself. Your stool screeched as you scooted in closer. Well... Your father was having a few nobles over. They were discussing how best to divide the plots of land surrounding the Vermalis mines. As you already know, there's been some turmoil over how far one can dig before they cross over into another man's territory. Just cut to the chase already. A story requires build-up, you know. Not when you're dragging it out just to stall. If I wanted a lesson on plot division, I would have called for Corello, so give me a good story. Alright, well, your father had come to an agreement and everyone made a toast. I wanted to deny drinking, but your father felt like it would be a good idea for me to join in as well. So I took a drink with them. And I ended up finishing the whole bottle. And I sort of ran out of the castle and around the city. And I wound up passed out on a rooftop without clothes on. No way. I couldn't recall what I had done during my state of intoxication, but your father was not pleased with my behavior. A few of the nobles left furious and apparently insulted, and some guards were knocked out. Wow, now that is something I wish I could have seen. You will never see such an act, because I have no plan on embarrassing myself in such a way again. I was beyond ashamed of my actions that day that I took a pledge to never drink again. Is that why you didn't even take a drink of that wine I gave you during my birthday? That would have been a very bad idea. Even I do not know what kind of mischief I would have gotten into. Or maybe a good thing. That party was pretty much dead before I walked in. Man, to think of what all the nobles could have thought of you swinging on the chandelier like a trapeze artist. Father would have been furious at me. I do not think he would have blamed you. Are you kidding me? He would have known it was me in an instant. Still, such a shame you took a pledge. It's never fun to drink alone. I suppose, just this once I could try a sip. Hey, that's the spirit! Just a bit, though. I have no intention of making a fool of myself. Okay, I'll stop you if you start to get a little crazy. He grabbed the bottle and poured him his own cup, making extra sure to top it off, to which Koshiro simply sighed. He hesitated for a moment, then quickly and carefully downed the drink without spilling a drop. His eyes went wide and he chuckled as he coughed. He patted his back a few times till his fit was over. Well, that was not something I was expecting. What did you think? Well, it was sweet and smooth, though it burned a bit. Even for my first time, I can tell this is good stuff. Before long, the Wolfman chef began to cook the food right before our eyes. The temperature rose and the sound of sizzling foods and smells filled the air. A sudden burst of flame took you by surprise, but the chef appeared to have it under control. It's strange to see your food being prepared right there, but it certainly was an experience you didn't get to see often. He cut the ingredients with quick efficiency, tossed them around before they burned, and before long the food was done, plated and served right to you, still hot and steaming. There was a medley of small dishes, what looked like a breaded meat, what appeared to be fish, some soup, and fried vegetables. The distinct flavors were unlike anything you'd ever tried before. For someone that you had already deemed on his reaction to Koshiro, you had to give him credit for his cooking. You finished your meal long before Koshiro, and he offered you up his share. While you gladly accepted without hungry you were, you still couldn't think of what little he ate was enough to fill him. You stayed for just a little while longer to finish up a second bottle of sake. While you felt only slightly tipsy, Koshiro had only a few cups was starting to sway. Aw, he's a lightweight. You pulled away from the stand, having to be one to help him walk. He placed an arm around your shoulder, and the two of you started on the way to his home. He apologized immensely for causing you trouble, and each time you told him that it was okay. He was so close you could hear his gentle breathing, and every so often you turned your head, you nearly bumped nose to snout. You couldn't help wrapping your arm around his waist and drawing him in closer. There was nothing troublesome about this. In fact, you were quite enjoying it. The only hard part was trying to follow his slurred instructions. He guided you further and further away from the village center, where the beaten path began to vanish and trees and shrubbery started to surround you. You asked him if it was the right way, but he simply urged you to go further. You trusted him, but still, to bring you this far away was making you a bit nervous. A lone, run-down house waited in the distance, lit only by the stars and the moon. There were no sounds of other people now, just the wind blowing through the trees and the occasional owl hooting in the night. Koshiro, are you sure this is it? The home looked a little worse for wear, and quite frankly, something you would have found out of a horror story. Yeah. Koshiro closed his mouth and swallowed hard. Perhaps it wasn't such a good idea to give him that much to drink. He was acting a bit less loopy now, but it was clear that the sake wasn't settling well. I think I can walk from here. Are you sure? You look a little uneasy. Yes, I'll be fine. You let him go, and he nearly crashed into his own door. Koshiro, you alright? Just lost my balance a bit. He struggled to get up and wrestled with the door a bit before it finally became unstuck. The inside of the house was filled with a thin layer of dust. Just the opening of the door was enough to swirl it around the air and send you into a coughing fit. Before Koshiro moved too far into his home, he removed his shoes and set them off to the side. It was a first for you, but it made sense. Wouldn't want to drag more dirt to the home. You followed his example and rested your own footwear beside his and continued inside. The air smelled old, musty, and stale, and the floors creaked with every step you took. More than the dust and debris wafting around the room, everything actually looked relatively neat. There was little in here, a few pots and some more pots in another corner, and actually, as soon as your eyes adjusted to the darkness, you saw that there was pretty much nothing in here. No chairs, no dressers, no art on the wall. You weren't expecting anything high-class like at the castle, but it certainly was a surprise to visit a home so quaint, if that was even the word for it. Koshiro, do you really live here? You knew that he didn't really have any right to complain. Koshiro urged you to stay at one of the other homes in the village that the elder offered, but you refused. It was the first time that you had visited another person's home that didn't belong to a noble, and you really were curious to see how he used to live like, and give you a bit of insight into the real him. I haven't used this place in some time, so it's a bit of a mess. I apologize for this. I still should have cleaned up, even if I didn't realize we were going to be staying here. Perhaps we should go back. The other house will be much cleaner, and it's fine. I was the one who wanted to come anyway, so it's not your fault, and I'm not really complaining about that. It's just, there isn't really anything here. I'm sorry. I didn't have much as a child, and the village only spared me the bare essentials to live. You don't need to apologize, it's just a surprise to see. Guess I'm so used to marble floors, golden chandeliers, and stained glass windows that seeing a home like this certainly puts my life into perspective. I really did have it all, didn't I? But this is actually kind of nice. I like it. It's peaceful. The sound of the wind blowing through the trees and the frogs croaking made you really feel like you were away from the castle. It helped soothe and ease your heart and mind, if even for a night. All right, if you truly wish to stay, I will say no more. Despite the weathered look of the place, it did have a bit of a charm. Everything seemed to be made of wood, from the floors to the ceiling, adding to its naturalistic and simplistic look. But as soon as you realized that he must have lived here alone as a child, the atmosphere went from quaint to lonesome. Having to be pushed away so far from the village, it was likely the dream home for someone trying to get away from the noise of the city. But what if that wasn't what Koshiro wanted? What if he wanted to be surrounded by people? How many lonely hours did he spend in his home? Jake! Huh? You turned around. Koshiro was staring at you with a puzzling look. I asked you if you were alright with sleeping on the floor. Oh, sure. You are likely used to sleeping on a mattress, but in the village we use blankets as our beds. It's actually a lot more comfortable than it sounds. Well, so far I've woken up on the beach with a face full of sand and in the woods with a face full of leaves. Can't really get much worse than that. At least the room where I went to sleep is a bit cleaner than this, so you won't need to worry about breathing in anything. And I think I might have some more suitable clothes for you as well. They should fit you. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? Well, for one, they are dirty, and considering that you just took a bath, it would be better that you were to wear something clean. Also, you stick out a bit much in the village in those clothes. And it wouldn't do to have you sleep in your day clothes. Lastly... Alright, I get the point. I'll wear them. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so brash about it. It's alright. I understand. You're just trying to look out for me. Right, I'll go set up the bed. Give me just a moment. Koshiro. Yes? You know you can take off your mask now. Right. Almost as though he were touching something he shouldn't have, Koshiro carefully removed his mask. It seemed like the mask really was a part of him. And while he didn't seem to mind it, you couldn't help but want to take it from his hands and break it in half. He smiled gently, then moved on. Koshiro moved into a separate room, but the walls were so thin you could hear him rummaging about. I should just tell Koshiro to keep off that mask while he's around me. He's suffered long enough with being forced to wear that thing for the privilege of living in this village. Seshiro, he's a lot of things he's going to explain to me. As you waited, you walked around the house observing everything. A thin layer of dirt and dust covered most of the counters, and the floor underneath creaked with each step. In the center of the room was a small, in-ground area covered in sand. A low-hanging pot was situated in the middle over the charred remains of likely wood. It seemed to be where he did his cooking, but you could tell that he must have not used it for years. As you looked down in the boxed area, you noticed something hidden in the sand. What's this? He knelt down and started to sift the ash and sand away, digging up what looked like a charred wooden doll only about the size of a finger. As you wiped off the soot, you found it was in the shape of a fox. Its colors were pretty worn out, though. You could tell it was pretty well made. The carving's quite intricate for something so small. Did he toss this into the fire to burn it? The beds are set up. You jumped and slammed your head straight into the pot in front of you. Koshiro's steps were as silent as ever, even on the old creaky floors. As you put a hand to your forehead, it immediately stung at your touch. You groaned as Koshiro rushed to your side. Jake, are you all right? Ugh, I didn't hear you there. Move your hand, let me see it. You moved your hand and Koshiro peered in closer. It's bad, isn't it? My skull is still ringing. Well, it's red, and black, and blue. But it's not bleeding or anything. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and check out our Patreon, YouTube memberships if you can. It always helps. Anyway, I love you all, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye!